So you get a little bit of a flavor of what's happening at Ford, which reflects what was happening elsewhere in the US and in Europe. The sort of furthering of rationalization of work and how organizations are organized. So let me ask you this. Based on the video, what are some factors that explain Ford's success? Yes?
Lower price and higher wages for his workers.
Mm-hmm. So low cost. So instead of having cars cost a lot, mass production. Right? So a strategy of mass production at low cost. Right? Typically, like in strategy, you have two types of strategy: high volume and low cost. That's kind of Ford, or low volume and high cost. That's Ferrari or luxury items, right? So that's one factor. And then you said high wages for workers. So why high wages for workers?
If you provide an efficiency wage, you can get the best workers and retain them for longer, and
Right.
maybe they'll be more motivated to work harder.
Mm-hmm. So the idea is sort of motivation, to up the motivation of workers. Why did workers need to be motivated?
They're doing repetitive tasks
Right.
all day long.
Yeah.
If they weren't getting paid well, it would
Uh-huh.
suck.
The job kind of like, is it pleasant to work? Does it look pleasant to work in the Ford factory, right? Not really. Hard work, very repetitive, so not very motivating. In fact, there's a mention in the documentary that a lot of workers quit after a few days because they couldn't handle the rhythm, right? So high wages were there to motivate it. What were some other recipes for success? Yes?
He was willing to adapt. He had like an English school for
Uh-huh.
immigrants.
So related to that, so he took care of his workers somehow. He accepted what was given to him, but under that point, there's the notion of immigration, right? So you had immigrants from Europe mainly, but also from the countryside, migrants from the countryside who moved to cities to work as factory workers, right? Farmhands. And all of those people were willing to do the kind of brutal job that Ford offered, right? So that was kind of a cheap, unskilled, willing workforce that had no alternative. So that was kind of like one other recipe. Today we don't have that in America, but the only other part where we have that is in the agricultural area, California, Texas, where we have immigrants from South America coming and doing the jobs that no Americans would accept to do, right? But for manufacturing jobs, where are the manufacturing jobs today in America? Where did they go? Out of the country, right? To South America, to China, to Southeast Asia, because nobody wants to do that kind of job anymore in America, because we don't have like immigrants or migrants from the countryside that are willing to do that kind of job anymore, right? So the conditions have changed, but that's part of the condition at the time. What else is part of Ford's success recipe? We've been talking about it kind of in the first part of the class. What's driving the evolution of society since?
Technological advances.
So there's technological advances, right? So mechanization, machines doing the job. If you can replace a person's manual job by a machine, it's going to be much more efficient and it's going to cost less because you're using oil essentially or other forms of electrical power to replace muscle power, right? So that's part of it. Yes.
Yeah, a very well-structured organization with
Right.
different divisions that
Uh-huh.
together.
So efficiency in the organization of work, which I'll say it's relying on division of labor, extreme division of labor, right? Divide every task, divide a job into as many small tasks as possible and get a different person to do it and get them to do it faster and faster and time them. And then find a way to, it's really logistics is a big part of it. Logistically organize the flow of work so that it goes as fast as possible and as efficiently as possible. Right? When you have extreme division of labor, when you divide a task into a bunch of different a job into a very small task, that makes it easier to replace a particular job with a machine. Because machines are not so smart at doing complex things. But if you have a very simple task, you can have a machine that automates it. You can automate things much more easily. Right? Now, with the furthering of the progress of science, we now have machines, robots that are smarter, that can adapt more. But if you can have a simple machine and replace a job of a person with that, that's going to give you a lot of economies. What other factors are there? So we have technological progress, division of labor, cheap immigrants, high wages, logistical organization, right? Constant innovation. What are the social factors at present? Like not technological, but more social factors. Right. So there's a number of tricks, or sort of like not necessarily tricks, but attempts at winning the workers. Right. The idea is that it's not cool, it's not pleasant to work in these factories. So you pay them well, you create loyalty by giving them the opportunity to buy a product with a saving scheme. What other things are used? Any pressure tactics in there? Yes? Uh-huh. Do you want to take a minute? Yes?
They were very anti-union.
Right.
They focused a lot of time and energy on avoiding union formation.
So definitely like eliminating unions, plant protection service, make sure that the workers don't organize themselves to ask for a better share of the deal. Right? Because I mean, there's definitely like with all of those economies, gains, that are obtained by, all of this money that is gained by increasing the productivity. Who captures that? Some of it goes to the workers in the form of higher wages. You see that Detroit became a boomtown, but a big portion of it goes to Ford. A big portion of it goes to the owner of the capital, and he becomes a multimillionaire, one of the richest men in America. Right? Capitalism is based on that. Right? The owner of the capital gets a bigger share. And a whole question is, well, how do you negotiate the proportion that goes to the owner of the capital versus to the workers? That's what Marxism is all about, right? What's a fair deal? Well, if you force the workers to accept a deal and you prevent them from organizing themselves to ask for a better deal, so if you stop unions are there. It's a way to organize workers to ask for a better deal, right? Ford prevents that in order to get to stay in control of who gets what. Wages are decided by the employer. If you don't want to work there, you don't have to. Somebody else will come and do your job, right? So another aspect which wasn't mentioned is sort of racial and ethnic competition. So you take different groups of new immigrants and pit them against each other and say, if you don't want to do the job, this other group will do it. Right? So that's a form of social control. Part of an organization is not just technology and racialization, but the dark side of the story is how do you control people? How do you make people do what you want them to do, even if it's unpleasant? How do you gain power over people? That's part of organizations. We've all been part of that, right? We've all experienced working for an organization and feeling under the thumb of something that we can't control, that controls us, right? And we want to rise up to the top because we feel we'll have more control there, right? But that's kind of the dark side. Modernity, the bright side is we get consumer society. The dark side is we get social control. And we all become part of a big machinery that can feel very alienating. You get a little bit of that in that documentary. If you want to see more of that, you can watch Charlie Chaplin's Modern Times. The experience of what it's like to work in a factory. I was mentioning, those jobs have evolved today. Where are they? Many of them are in China. Right? China has become the big factory producer of the world, because that's the place where people are still willing to work that hard. Moving from the countryside, having maybe not worked very hard, like farmhands in the 1920s in America, moving from ranches, in the Midwest, coming to Detroit. They used to hard work. They used to not having a lot. They're okay with a factory job. That still happens in China. In America, not so much. So that's kind of the story of